Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. Today we're taking a fascinating dive into the 17th century to see how a twisted, honestly kind of terrifying vision of hell is actually a perfect mirror for our modern society. We're looking at an absolute masterpiece of the Spanish Baroque era, and I promise you, by the end of this, you're going to look at the world around you just a little bit differently. We're grounding today's Explainer in a brilliant 2026 academic essay by Professor Jonathan Acuña Solano. He takes this completely fresh look at Francisco de Quevedo's classic text, Sueño del Infierno, or Dream of Hell, which was originally published way back in 1627. Now, Acuña Solano makes the case that this isn't just some spooky story about the afterlife. Actually, it's a masterclass in using humor and physical deformity to reveal the hidden, often super uncomfortable moral truths of a society that's in decline. All right, here's our itinerary for today. We'll start with a welcome to Quevedo's hell. Then we'll be decoding the grotesque, meeting the monsters in plain sight, looking at hell as a social mirror, and finally exploring the power of laughter. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. Welcome to Quevedo's Hell.
So to truly understand this particular underworld, you kind of have to leave your traditional expectations at the door. When we think of literary hells, we almost always picture Dante's Inferno, right? Strict divine justice, fire and brimstone, heavy theological punishment. But Quevedo's hell is a totally different beast. It's a biting social satire filled with recognizable, ordinary figures suffering from psychological entrapment. Instead of agonizing in pits of fire, they're literally just ordinary people doing exactly what they did on Earth over and over again. The absolutely crucial point Quevedo makes here is that entering hell doesn't transform these sinners into supernatural beasts. It doesn't change them at all, actually. It just strips away their earthly titles and societal respectability to reveal the ethical corruption that was always there. It's really not about divine retribution, it's about absolute visibility.
Section 2. Decoding the grotesque.
To understand exactly how Quevedo pulls this off, we have to look at his main literary tool. Professor Acuña Solano highlights Wolfgang Kaiser, who explains that the grotesque happens when our familiar reality suddenly becomes disturbingly alien. It makes us anxious because the ordinary rules just collapse. But then, you add in Mikhail Bakhtin's theory, which argues that the grotesque uses exaggerated bodily imagery and sort of carnival-like humor to challenge established social hierarchies and expose hypocrisy. Quevedo takes both of these ideas, merging them to turn highly recognizable human behaviors into something deeply uncomfortable, bizarre, and ultimately super revealing.
Rather than just being decorative or, weird for the sake of being weird, the grotesque here has a very specific job. Quevedo uses physical deformity to externalize inward vice. Basically, in his hell, a corrupt soul literally wears its corruption on the outside, leaving absolutely no room to hide. It completely dismantles false authority by mocking those who thought they were untouchable up on earth. And unlike the festive carnival Bakhtin often writes about, where society gets renewed, Quevedo offers almost no hope for rebirth. The punishment is permanent. This transforms comedy from a simple distraction into this incredibly sharp tool of ethical revelation.
Section 3. Monsters in plain sight.
So, who exactly are these souls wandering around? Well, you'll quickly notice that their so-called prestigious earthly professions are exactly what condemn them. The lawyers, hid behind legal expertise, but down in hell, their rhetoric is exposed as pure greed leading to endless, pointless deception. The physicians, exposed as arrogant frauds who did more harm than good. Some things never change, right? The hypocrites use religious piety as a mask, but are revealed to be beautiful tombs that are just full of spiritual decay. And the false nobles, their inherited status means absolutely nothing down here. Hell just levels the playing field instantly.
But you know what the absolute most shocking thing about these sinners is? The thing that makes them truly grotesque? It's their total lack of self-awareness. Even in hell, they continue to fiercely defend their corrupt actions. The lawyers keep arguing, the nobles keep demanding respect. They remain eternal prisoners of their own distorted perception of reality, totally incapable of self-knowledge.
Section 4. Hell as a social mirror.
This brings us to a major realization. This text isn't really about the afterlife at all. Quevedo is using the concept of hell purely as an allegorical courtroom to strip away the social prestige of 17th century Spain and expose the ethical decay underneath. This ties directly into the Baroque concept of desengaño, or this profound societal disillusionment. In Quevedo's society, earthly titles, wealth, and influence acted as a massive protective shield for terrible behavior. Vice regularly masqueraded as normality. By relocating these familiar institutions down to the underworld, Quevedo completely removes that protective authority.
And this perfectly captures why Quevedo's vision is essentially a giant funhouse mirror. It distorts the image only to show us a much more accurate reflection of our hidden flaws. The underworld isn't manufacturing evil, it's simply a place where the lights are finally turned all the way up. It just illuminates what was always present.
Section 5. The Power of Laughter.
Now, you might be wondering, if the message is so bleak, why make it funny? Professor Acuna Solano highlights this incredible thought from the renowned philosopher Umberto Eco to explain this dynamic. Eco argues that being aesthetically repulsed actually forces our brains to intellectually engage with uncomfortable truths. Think about it. When something is presented perfectly and beautifully, we often don't even question it. But ugliness, the grotesque, that forces us to stop, look closer, and confront the reality that polite society tries so incredibly hard to conceal.
Let's break down how this builds step by step because it's really quite ingenious. Quevedo sets what we can call a pedagogical trap. First, he hooks you with a joke. He entertains you with this absurd, grotesque exaggeration, and because you're laughing, your defensive barriers drop. You aren't expecting a lecture. Then, while your guard is totally down, he overturns the social hierarchies, completely mocking the rich and powerful. And finally, bam, the trap snaps shut. You suddenly realize the joke is on human nature itself. The laughter turns into a painful recognition of our own capacity for self-deception. As this excerpt from the source's abstract reinforces, the humor in this 17th century masterpiece isn't just for cheap entertainment. Not at all. It is a meticulously crafted pedagogical tool. It's designed to teach us about the extreme fragility of appearances and to literally transform our laughter into deep, lasting moral reflection. Which brings us to why all of this matters right now. Why on earth are we talking about a Spanish Baroque text from the 1600s? Well, because human nature hasn't fundamentally changed. We still battle deep-seated institutional corruption. Our society heavily rewards performative morality. People acting good for the cameras or social media while acting terribly behind closed doors. We constantly value outward appearance and status over actual inward integrity. Vice is still incredibly good at disguising itself as normality. Quevedo's 400-year-old warning remains a strikingly urgent explainer for our modern era. And that leaves us with a truly provocative thought to take away today. Consider the institutions, the leaders, and even the daily norms we just accept without question. If the masks of our modern society were suddenly stripped away right now in the exact same way Quevedo stripped them away in his dream of hell, who would the real monsters be?